with Howard and Marthine Galloway about their life. And April 4th, 1988, we're up here at their exclusive estate, and there is Father Howard Galloway. Figure out how to open up a camera. This little nesting seat. And here is Kent Galloway, this proud son, and I am Kirk, youngest son, and so we're gonna give it a couple of minutes here, and I think Kent will be the one back with you, probably at the next time. Okay, you wanna? You just go like. Remember, you go like this.
Okay, pause.
Now look. Now you look to it.
Kent, is this?
Sorry. Well, Dad needs a break. You can't be on camera.
Did you get any of that poem at all?
Well,
yeah.
I think we still got this feedback problem. See, and I'm trying to adjust the mic position so we don't hear any of that anymore. You know, that's just gonna take a little bit of.
Just relax. I always relax.
Now, see, I wonder if we shut this off.
Just next to him.
What about moving this?
Okay, wait a second. That might. Well, somebody did something. Too many cooks spoiled it. Oh, okay.
Kirk,
You're gonna settle down here, Mom.
I'm gonna settle down right here.
Okay.
Well, listen, we ought to be at the other end, I think. Although the camera's on us right over me over here now.
Well, what do you mean? Yes.
Yeah. No, just put your feet down. I don't think we can make this thing too comfortable.
Daddy, come on down here. You have to look cozy.
Now this
we
is a
got
test,
this little
so
audio
talk it
problem.
up,
That's
you
the
two.
problem.
An audio problem, I see.
We just have a feedback. You know, we can do something about that. We just got to be able to get the right mic placement, so we don't. And see, a lot of times it's like this coming out this way. Putting it in perpendicular will be the best place.
Yeah.
Hello. It's not making any difference at all. It's doing something a little bit better in some places than others.
Yeah. Maybe I can just rotate it until it's not.
What in the world
You know,
is going
I
on?
wonder.
Well, I get the feedback. See,
That's-
that means that there's some noise going in there and it comes out and the microphone picks it right up and it just bats back
Oh,
and
it's
forth.
like that too, but there.
Gets
Music
louder
goes
and
round
louder.
I wonder if I kind of went like this.
Did you figure
And
this
it comes
out?
out here.
Okay, here
Can't
we
figure
go.
it out.
Hey, I think this is it right here.
Let's see now.
Oh,
We're trying
Hello. Hey.
to. Maybe the television viewers could figure out how this
Okay.
camera comes
All right.
apart
It's
here.
too much.
Move that.
See, I do wonder, sometimes removing an object from an area can actually do it. It's true.
yeah.
Am I passing in and out from under here? Really
Have
good.
anything to do with it having a charging on the
Could be.
Your camera?
No,
No.
that power turn on.
I doubt it. That's a good something to mention.
I'm just trying to figure it
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
You've got some experience with
I
that.
guess not.
Your brother was a rock and roll man.
So, seems to go the. Be
very careful there,
dear.
Well,
Okay, so
he doesn't know how.
Not really good.
it's not mine. I borrowed it from somebody last week. I don't know how to open it up yet. You know.
Oh, I don't either.
It's a weird old camera.
There isn't
Okay,
anything.
now I think we got that now. Okay.
Oh,
Let's make some noise here.
Okay.
See, you come in here and that'll always do it. It seems.
Yeah, right. Well, we're the ones that should
But
make
you're
the
the
noise
guys-
here.
testing, testing,
area.
testing.
Are you
All
on?
right.
No.
Well, we kind of want to see.
What did you
Okay.
get? Did you hear
All right,
anything?
well, we
Let's
got
test it,
everything.
see what
Let's hear out.
We're gonna play it back now. See if we
Today.
It is.
So,
Listen,
it might be down. but I
Elizabeth,
brought
you know what
down-
I wish I had a recording of this whole procedure. I mean, who can top it?
Well, it's
Right.
gotten
Yeah.
farther than it ever would at the Olsons, I'll tell you that.
Well, are these batteries chargeable?
Yes, they are. We can
Oh.
put them into the wall, so that's not a problem tomorrow. What I will do is I'll put the other battery in its place if this one can't cut it, and it's recording actually right now. We're recording right
Okay.
now.
Oh, I
You want
see.
to run it back.
So we're going to run it back and see if we do have the sound problem on playback.
Well, what I want to
See,
say is, whatever we say, what an act to follow. I mean, Howard and I can't possibly come up with anything like what is preceded.
Well, but that hasn't all been recorded, see. So, what do you want me to say, Kent?
Well, you could maybe recite that poem.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Should I?
Sure.
Sure.
Between the dark and the daylight, when the night is beginning to lower, comes a pause in the day's occupation that is known as the children's hour. For my study, let's see.
That's all right,
Hey, you know,
Eddie.
It's all right,
yeah.
don't worry about it.
Hey, cut.
Just
No.
be cool.
Let's just see how this did. We don't
Yeah,
have to go on
okay.
forever. The battery is running low.
Was that
See, the battery, it shows that the battery's running low. See right there?
You want me to go down and get it? Isn't that in the back?
No, we're fine. Why don't we keep going? The thing we should do now is actually run it and just go for it, Ken. Because every successive time we turn it off, we're wearing down the battery even further.
Yeah.
Well, this is April 4th, 1988.
We're on?
This is our
Yeah,
yes.
you're
This
on.
is being recorded right now. So this is April 4th, 1988. This is Elizabeth and I are here. We've been here a couple more days on a 13-day stay here, and I just thought, you know, I'd like to have a tape of
Why
you
isn't
two,
she in it?
of you two relating your life, maybe just telling stories, you know, of Reno or when you were
Well,
out
where
in
will we
Omaha, or well, anywhere you want to start. Maybe you can take turns. You could talk a while, and then Dad could take over, or just like you normally sit and tell us stories. You know,
Okay.
just like,
Well, why don't we just, if
Maybe-
any place out of the blue, right?
sure.
But you know
Or
what we
could
told you the
lean
other
back
day?
and be comfortable there.
I think that Dad could take over now. But I have always told you kids that we wouldn't know each other if it weren't for Benjamin Franklin, and
Yeah,
Dad could
right.
tell you why. Go ahead, honey. You tell him why.
Well, when I started to college, I got a job as being the agent for the Curtis Publishing Company in Reno and Sparks, Nevada. So, the Curtis Publishing Company was originally founded, or the Saturday Evening Post, which the Curtis Publishing Company published, was founded by Benjamin Franklin. And so, Marthine's brother, Kenneth, was one of my star salesmen. And I would go around and give Kenneth his posts, and then each Thursday morning. And then every Saturday I'd come around and collect my money. And so I just slowly got acquainted with her.
The Solaris household.
Yes.
Now, what year was that?
That was in the fall of 29.
My gosh.
Seems like a long time ago.
Yeah.
Crinoline, I was wearing crinoline and hoop skirts. But
Hoop skirts.
anyway, I always thought he was such a nice looking guy. And I remembered him from high school as being that nice bashful boy with the rosy cheeks. But otherwise, I didn't really know who he was. But then when Kenneth started selling posts for Howard, why, he had these twice a week stops at 120 Marsh Avenue in Reno. And I thought he was kind of an interesting guy. And I was 17. And I remember when he had his 21st birthday, or was coming up. And I thought, 21, man, that's a man. Imagine, you know, being interested in a man. But anyway, then I invited him to a sorority formal at the Riverside Hotel, no less, and it cost $5 a couple, and don't think that that wasn't hard to come by. And then Howard was a year ahead of me. He was in the mechanical engineering side at the University of Nevada, and I was, see, I was a freshman, wasn't I? When you were a sophomore, we were going together when I
Yeah.
was a freshman.
Right.
Yeah. And Howard had, one day he came around to 120 Marsh with a classy little Ford Roadster, brand new.
Model A.
Yeah.
Oh, is that right?
Model A
Leather
Roadster.
seats, blue, it had a rumble seat.
Oh, boy.
Wow, you know, I mean, wow. He really had this neat car. Oh, Howard, an aside, you tell about how we decided before we were married to take our mothers down to the exposition in San Diego. And the mothers had a ride in the rumble seat together because no way would Howard and I be separated. You don't think that's, oh, that's true.
Well, it sounds
Howard
good.
only
So
wants
anyway,
the embellishments.
We, so yes, we took, well, all four of us went down from Reno down to San Diego. And, well, as I recall, we kind of changed positions.
Must have
down
taken a
there.
couple of days driving.
Yeah, a couple of days.
How fast would you go?
Oh, well, you know, as fast as the law would allow.
Might that be, what, 45 or something?
50, 55, 50, yeah.
Oh,
And so we went, we were there a few days. I don't remember just how long. Then we came home by way of Las Vegas and stopped and saw the Boulder Dam and so forth. And
But at
then-
that time, Las Vegas, they just shot up the town on Saturday night. I mean, there was nothing there.
Oh yeah, Las Vegas at that time, the wind would blow down the main street. It was just a dust storm. Oh,
of course, there was
What
there
a little
gambling
town.
at that time, or?
Well, there was
That
some
was small
gambling,
scale.
but small
Yeah.
scale,
Yeah.
not on any of the big scale. So then we started up on the highway that goes from Las Vegas on up to Reno, and we got way up in the country there, and I could keep looking at the gas gauge, and gosh, it seemed to be going down and down, and I couldn't think of any service station within what looked like it would be the distance that we would be able to travel. And pretty soon I could see my mother kind of half asleep, but she'd open her eye and look at that gauge. And we passed a prospector with his burro,
I don't remember this.
and we got about a mile beyond him, and the car stopped. Out of gas. And boy, a long way from Goldfield. So in a little while, this guy caught up with us. And,
Prospect?
yeah.
I don't remember.
Mule.
And we told him our trouble. Well, he says he had a can of gas. He said, just for things like this, he said. So he gave us the gas and sold it, I don't remember, and we cranked up and left him in the dust.
But you know, another thing the kids might like to know about was when we were going to school, it was very difficult to get a job. This was in the Depression, and in the summer, it was very coveted for the university girls to get a job at Lake Tahoe and a job hashing at the resorts. So I heard about a rather remote place in the Sierra, and I wrote to this man, his name was Hildinger, and asked if he had a job. In the meantime, Howard and I had borrowed Dad's Ford and gone all around Lake Tahoe and stopped at resorts to see if I could get a job. No job. But I wrote to Mr. Hildinger at Angora Lakes, elevation 11,000 feet almost, above Lake Tahoe, and he wrote back that yes, I had a job with him. I was elated. I got a marvelous send-off from my sorority sisters and friends, and Howard and I set out for Angora Lake. It was sometime before your birthday. It must have been about the 1st of May. After you left Tahoe, we went up beyond Fallen Leaf Lake,
Beer, if you want a beer.
beyond Cascade Lake, and we came to snow. Now, Howard, you tell. I had one suitcase. I'd never left home before. I was going to work for this Mr. Hildinger at Fallen Leaf Lake. So you tell what happened.
Well, we had been up there, up in that country, the year before, and when we ran into this snowbank, I thought, my gosh, this is sure a long, long way from any place that I knew. But I picked up the suitcases, and we got over the snowbank and went
The
on.
car could only go so far.
So that was, yeah, we had to walk from there. And I just kept thinking about this walk, you know. I couldn't think, my gosh, we were way up there, and still we weren't up to his resort. And so anyway, we kept on going, and we got up on a ridge, and we walked along the ridge, and then we
Howard carrying my heavy suitcases.
and then we got to a place where I remember that we'd been the year before, and it said Lower Angora Lake. Well, we had never seen an Upper Angora Lake, and the address that she was going to was Upper Angora Lake. And we kept on walking. These suitcases are getting heavier and heavier.
Snow, deep snow.
And
Tracks.
finally, by golly, we came up a slope, and we could see a little smoke on the top above this slope. So we knew we were getting close to civilization. And by golly, there they were. Here was Mr. Hildinger and his wife and two little kids, maybe 4 and 5 years old, you know. And so that was Marthine's job, take care of these kids and to get this.
Between your freshman and sophomore years?
Sophomore and junior prep.
Oh, okay.
But the thing was, I'd never left home before. I had this marvelous send-off, you lucky kid getting a job at the lake, you know. And Howard leaving me, I'll never forget in my life, Howard going back over the hill. Well, of course, he'd met the family and the 2 kids. And in the meantime, Upper Angora Lake, if you ever get there, you leave Tahoe, you go up to Fallen Leaf Lake, you go up to Cascade Lake, you go up to Angora Lake, and then you go to Upper Angora Lake. So someday you'll get there, but I suspect that you still have to walk from lower to upper. I don't think the road ever got up there.
No.
But Mr. Hildinger had a concession to run a small resort. But there had been a severe winter. The whole small alpine lake was frozen. There had been an avalanche in the winter, and the lake was covered with huge rocks and fallen trees. So,
yeah, there was all this devastation on the ice, you know,
right.
rocks and trees and everything on this ice.
you know, when I think about it, I get goose pimples. But
Were
then,
you paid for a full summer's work?
Yeah,
Per
suppose-
month, or what were you?
no,
getting back
the summer.
then? The summer.
Well, paid,
Do you remember how much
Hourly wage.
Yes.
it was?
Yes,
Oh.
I was to get $1 a day and tips. Tips were 0.
because there wasn't anybody up there yet.
Lucky Mark.
But I've
So
always,
much food.
let me say, I've always been a good worker. So I would work, and I'd say, what do you want me to do next? It was my first, you know, job of that kind. And what we had to do, the Hildingers and I, was open up the camp. And they had some cabins scattered around the lake, and they had to be opened up, aired out, linen put in them, such as it was. And their business was for hikers who walked up to Echo Lake and then on up in the Sierra. And they taught me to make lemonade. They said they were famous for their lemonade, so I learned how to make lemonade. But like a foolish young gal, I would say, well, what do you want me to do next? Finally, I was working, I would say, 16 hours a day. When the 30 days came up and I thought I was going to get $30, Mr. Hildinger said, well, business has been slow. Of course, that was the understatement of the year. The business has been 0. But he said, sorry, I can't really pay you, but we'll see about how things work out. Now, at a certain place, you know I have some Spanish blood in me, and a certain place, up it comes. It had lain dormant. I wrote home to my mother and dad that I'd really been working like mad, and Mr. Hildinger said that he couldn't pay me now, my dad, you know, Hector Solares, also had a modicum of Spanish blood, more than your mother. And Dad got so mad that he packed Mother in the car, came up and got me. Was I surprised to see my mother and Dad? They had to walk up from where Howard was telling about, and here was my dad up there. And he said, Marthine, you're coming home. And so I realized exactly what happened. I mean, no way were we put upon. You know, I mean, at a certain point, that was it.
So I went around, it must have been on a Wednesday night, because I came around to deliver the post,
Oh, yeah.
and here was Marthine.
Oh.
And here was Hector walking around, and he was so mad he couldn't talk to me. And I said, what happened? And so then Marthine told me what happened.
Oh, yeah, and you remember my dad was so mad that he
Oh,
wouldn't
boy.
go up to he'd sent Mama up. He knew that he'd explode in front of him. So he stayed down below. Well, anyway, I packed up my things and went home, and that was the end of. Now, there are a few things that we have retained. If you kids hear the euphemism for toilet tissue as Waldorf, that comes from those days, because the Hildingers always said, well, Marthine, we need about 6 rolls of Waldorf in cabin 1. So anyway, Waldorf is what we have said all these years. In this
So
family.
about 15 years later, one time we were up at Tahoe, and we had Heather and Bruce and I suppose maybe Brian, and we went up to this same road as far as we could go, no change, and then hiked the rest of the way from Lower to Upper Angora Lake.
Summer.
Walked around there in the summer, you know, and by golly, right away we spotted Hildinger, and we could recognize him even though we had been a long time. And you know, I could see this fellow kind of eyeing me up and down too, but we just didn't say anything. We walked around, looked the place over, and finally we identified ourselves to Mr. Hildinger. Well, Mr. Hildinger was very glad to see us. He remembered, of course, the dirty deal he'd given Marthine. And,
In the meantime, things have picked up a little.
oh yeah, things. So he gave us a lemonade each.
Oh, wow.
He said, Marthine, remember how you made the lemonade. Well, anyway, that was, we've had a lot of experiences you kids probably haven't even heard about, but that was something. So I went back into town. Then, let me see, was that the year that you worked at Salters?
No, that
No,
must have
then
been
another
year.
summer. Mind you, these jobs at Tahoe were very much coveted. I mean,
Yeah,
any kind of job. In the first place, it got away from home, where you were eating off your folks, who probably had all they could do to set the
Now,
table.
what year was this now?
Well, this must have been about 1930 or 31.
So the Depression.
Oh
had
yeah,
really-
Well,
yeah,
honey,
yeah.
I got
That-
out of high
she-
school in 30, so it was later than that.
31,
Yeah.
31 or 30. Well, 31 then I guess.
When was the peak of the Depression? Was that 33?
Well, it
33, I'd say.
yeah, it was pretty low in 33. Yeah.
But then let's finish up with another Tahoe experience.
Yeah, so then Mommy got a job. So you went up and got a job at Young's Bijou on the south shore of Tahoe. Go ahead.
Well, it's just south, wouldn't you say, of the Nevada state line. And Young's
Yeah.
Bijou Lodge was quite a fashionable, fancy restaurant. And we called it hashing. Maybe they still do, but you waited on table. Well, you started out as a hasher. Sorority sisters of mine who were twins were up there first, and they really got me the job, and then I was up there at Young's, and they had kind of a dormitory for the helpers and so forth. But you started out serving the help. Well, Mr. Young, he was really, I keep reading about sexual harassment. Well, he would nip me a little bit, you know, and he would pat me a little bit, and he was just really kind of cozy. And I was, in the meantime, working up to waiting in the dining room where you did get tips. Well, he just got on the verge of freshness. And of course, at that time, nobody ever heard of harassment or, you know, I mean, you were on your own.
But now, wait
Yeah,
now.
okay.
So then, while she was there, I was around Reno.
Oh, yeah.
I had just gotten out of college. It was a college graduate in mechanical engineering and no jobs.
Bachelor of Science, ME.
And so a girl that a girl that I'd gone to, was in high school with and graduated with me, she was up working at Emerald Bay Camp. Well, she was there right at first, I
Yeah.
guess, yeah. And she called her mother and she says, there's a job up here and I wonder if Howard might want it. And so here I was, just laying around at home, eating off my dad, couldn't be too independent. And I said, yeah, I'd take the job. So I went up and wound my way up to Emerald Bay. I thought, my gosh, what could this job be? Maybe it could be the motorboat boy. All I'd have to do is run motorboats.
Oh, because it's an island out there in Tahoe.
yes.
It's a
Yeah.
beautiful
No,
spot.
it's-
But well, this wasn't on the island. This was on the north shore of Emerald
The
Bay.
island was this big.
And thought of all these nice, pleasant jobs, and drove up to this place, you know, and
Drove down.
drove down there, and so talked to, I don't remember who I did talk to, but the job, what was the job? It was a dishwasher. I thought, a dishwasher. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. And
Sheepskin in his pocket.
but the same argument prevailed, you know. I figured, well, I'd go home and live off my dad, and here I was too good to take a dishwashing job. And so I says, okay, $28 a month, and I had and get my meals and a tent to with a wooden floor to live in. So I started into washing dishes, and then pretty soon the cook, he decided that maybe he could make a cook out of me, and so he got me to making his banana fritters for him at night and so forth, because there'd be no dishes then, because I hadn't, this was before the meals, see. So anyway, I went along there for, oh gosh, I guess about a month, made my $28. Well, in the meantime, Eileen Haffey must have left, and there was a job open, and so I got a hold of Marthine some way, and she was, of course, getting very disgusted with Mr. Young, pinching her and so forth. And so I said,
Terrible.
I said, there was a job over there. She could come over. So she came over and got this job at
Waiting on table.
waiting on table at the Emerald Bay camp. And so anyway, they had a band of 4 guys there, and these 4 guys got their board and room and their cigarettes, and that's all they got.
To play music.
To play
every
music every night. They had a dance hall kind of on stilts out over the bay, over the lake.
Very
there.
pretty.
Yeah. And so they would ask all us kids, you know, all the help to go out there and dance at night, because they wanted the place to look lively,
Yeah,
see?
Like-
things going.
Because
We call them shills in Nevada.
yeah. So we'd all go out, we'd all go down there after we got through with the dishes and so forth, and dance for Mr. Salter. Oh gosh! But then we had every once in a while we'd have a picnic and go out at night and have a.
Well, Rose Taverna would sneak some coffee and things, and we'd put them in the rowboat, and nobody knew, and we drove out to the little island, and we knew where
Yeah.
the key was to the little castle. And but in the meantime, though, to finish up about Mr. Young, I got really tired of having my bottom pinched, and so one day I just quit. I said, I'm leaving. Oh, they were surprised. But anyway, how was I going to get out of there? I mean, there was no bus service.
You
Here
mean
I
you
was.
didn't come from there right over down?
Oh,
there?
absolutely not.
Oh,
I
I
went
see.
down, it was hot in Reno. And
You
I
went
thought,
down home. I
I
see.
thought maybe I should
Oh.
stand a little pinching, and, you know, it was at least cooler up a towel. But no, and I wondered how I was going to get home, and then I thought of Wilma Kennedy, who had a house
Oh,
over
yeah.
on Elk Point.
Oh, boy.
So I called Wilma Kennedy, and were they going into town? And I needed help. Sorority sister, you know,
Yeah.
rescued me.
To the rescue.
Took me to Reno.
Sure.
Well, of course, gee, what a letdown. You know, here I was, another nice job at Tahoe, another year. And it was hot in Reno, and I thought, boy, you know, this is, I just let my temper get the best of me. But anyway, then is when you called me,
I see.
and then I went up to Emerald Bay
Yeah.
Camp. And then Howard and I were there together. But now tell them how this dishwasher job developed.
Yeah, well, I worked at the dishwasher job, I guess about a month, and they had another fellow there. He was an Austrian, and a fellow, maybe 50 years old, and he was the what they called the camp plumber. He would see that the water tank was full, and he'd water the lawn, he'd cut the lawns, and if he had any spare time, he'd they tried to build a cabin, another cabin each year, and so he'd put the plumbing in the cabin, and so he got appendicitis, and they rushed him down to a hospital in Placerville, and
Didn't wish him any luck, you know,
No,
bad luck,
but then I said to Mr. Salter, he said, well, gee, you know, I could probably do that job.
Elmo,
What? Elmo.
that was his name. Go ahead.
Oh, and so he says, well, he says, I didn't think about you, Howard. He says, yeah. He says, well, I'll tell you. He says, I have sent word down to Fresno. Fresno is where he wintered in the winter, and he says, there's a fellow coming up, and he says, if he gets here, he's got the job. If he doesn't get here, you've got the job. Well, of course, I didn't wish this guy any bad luck getting up there, but he never showed up. He never showed up. And so I got the job as a camp plumber, $40 a month. And
Tell them how you fix the refrigerator.
so anyway, it was my job to cut the lawns and do all these things. And so they had an ice plant there to cool the big refrigerator for the kitchen. And but they were using this refrigerator just with ice, because they said that this refrigerator, the refrigerating machine wouldn't work. And so I monkeyed around with it. I'd never seen anything like it in my life, and never have seen anything like it since. But I'd turn the switch on, and the motor would run, and everything would seem to run. But the belt would always come off. And I thought, well, gee, maybe it's just the belt. And so I held the belt on with something, and the thing worked, and in a minute they were getting frost on one side, and warm on the other, you know. And so, by golly, I got the thing. Well, I guess I'd asked Salter if I could monkey around with it. He said sure. And by golly, I had it going, and the cook was just tickled to death. You know, the refrigerator was melting ice. You know, it was probably about 38 degrees, and it wasn't cold enough. And I could get this thing down to freezing, and they worked great. Worked great. Ran it all summer. So the cook really thought I was pretty good, even though he had lost a fritter baker. He gained an ice machine mechanic.
Yeah, that's a good guy to have on your side, like Kirk.
Yeah, oh, the cook, yeah, he was a vicious fellow. He threw knives at us.
Yeah, he was a kind of a
Gee,
hot-tempered
he was
guy.
mean. Oh, you know, he'd get kind of hot and bothered when things got rushing, and he actually threw a knife at that, what was your name?
Rose Taverna.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Like the
yeah.
Wild West.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, you hear about cooks, and they get awfully hot over those stoves.
Oh,
and they
yeah.
get kind of rushed. And
Too much pressure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
gee, you know, and they have a limited time, and they have dining room waiting.
I remember from my country club days, right, Elizabeth?
So then I stayed there then as the plumber all summer, and they had an old Cadillac, kind of just a touring car, and Mrs. Salter had a nice Packard. So one night they said to me, we got some guests coming down to Tahoe City tonight, and we wonder if you could go down and get them.
In your Ford?
Well, they didn't mention the Ford, see, and I thought, gee, maybe I can drive Mrs. Salter's Packard down there. And so when it came time to shove off, why, they gave me the Cadillac. But the trouble with the Cadillac was it didn't have a starter on it.
Oh, I had to crank it.
Well, but I don't think it had a crank. You had to park it on a hill. Oh, gosh. So anyway, I don't remember that you could crank it. So I still went down. Went down to Tahoe City and picked up, there was this mother and her daughter, young woman. And
The train come in? I don't remember.
well, was there a train at that time, 1933? Maybe it was a train.
Yeah, there was.
Yeah, or else it was a bus. No, I think it was a
No,
train, yeah.
no.
And he said, there's two people is all we know, but he says, go out there, he says, and shout, Emerald Bay Camp, right this way, folks. And I thought, oh my gosh, with this decrepit Cadillac, I wasn't going to be doing something like that. And then when I did get down there, here was the driver for Pomines. He had a nice suit, you know, not
Uniform?
a uniform on, you know, and he had a nice car, and he was doing that. But I had the Packard, or I had the Cadillac parked back up the hill a ways so that I'd get started. So anyway, I got the two women in the car, and we started back for Emerald Bay, and we were breezing along, And see, the mother was sitting up in front, and the daughter was sitting in the back, and the daughter's hat flew off. Well, you know, that was kind of a mild catastrophe, because if I let me see,
Where would you
well,
stop?
I don't remember that. I don't remember that we had a brake either on. Because, and
Maybe you're using
anyway,
the handbrake on.
well, I mean a handbrake. We had a foot brake, yeah. And so anyway, I got the thing stopped and left the engine running somewhere, got it on a hill again. And anyway, I ran back and got her hat, and we got back to Emerald Bay without any problem. But the next time he called me to go, I said, well, you know, I could go down in my car. You give me the gas. Oh, well, that's all right, sure. So when we only had one or two people, I could get them into my roadster.
Well, I think that that's enough for one recording, don't you?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. You know,
Take a little
when,
break.
do you realize we haven't had dessert?
No, let's eat dessert.
Yeah.
Time for me.
Yeah. See, that was that noise.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to introduce it again. This is part 2 of the Kent Galloway interviews with Marthine Galloway, here on my left. I'm sure everybody recognizes her. And Howard Galloway. We're up here at the Ponderosa. It's April 5th, 1988. This is 12:30 in the afternoon. And I was wondering if you two could just carry on with your early life experience. I know part 1 we talked about your early jobs, you know,
Yeah. Say,
Emerald
could
Bay
I
and Lake Tahoe and all
say
that.
something? I think this is great for the family to see once. Nobody wants to see it twice.
Oh yeah, well, this
Yeah,
is-
and other people aren't going to be interested.
Then we'll go into a vault,
Yeah.
into a time capsule.
yeah, that's right, absolutely. So just
Okay,
you know,
Donna.
relax and just
Okay.
tell us what you,
Yeah.
all those stories we've heard all these years. That's what I'd like to
So
hear.
many times.
Yeah, it's great stuff.
Well, in September 1935, I got a job with the U.S. Geologic Survey. They didn't have a truck for this party. They had money for the party, but no truck. And so the fourth man of the party, who would be me, had to have a car of some kind to transport the party around, or else he didn't get the job.
Huh.
So I said to these two gentlemen that came from the Geologic Survey that I had this roadster and that's all I had. Well, they thought that would be all right. They said the only thing we have to carry on this party is two stadia boards, which are 1x4s painted with figures on it, and about 16 feet long. And they said, could you rig up something to put it on the fenders? And I said, yeah, I could get something to put on the fenders and put a strap on it. Well, they said, that's fine, you got the job. So they said, we got to go over to Carson City. This was all happened in Reno. They said, we got to go over to Carson City and talk to the state engineer, and we'll come back tomorrow morning, and we can start out for Elko. So the next day, they started out for Elko. Got out there and talked to the county engineer out there, and decided we'd have to start the survey on the Marys River at Death, Nevada.
Oh, brother, Deeth.
So the chief of party, who was a fellow maybe about 55 or 60 years old, he was from Harney County, I think, Oregon, and then the two rodmen we would pick up locally. So we got a line on two fellows and picked them up locally, and we got a room in a bunkhouse on the 71 Ranch, whose headquarters were right near Deeth. And then we found a lady who had a kind of a boarding house where we could eat our breakfast and our dinner, and she'd make us a lunch. And we got this room in the bunkhouse, and we'd have to get out in the morning and pump water to shave with, cold, and this was along in September. Things were, the elevation there is 5,500 feet, so the mornings were pretty crisp. And we started started surveying up the Marys River. And the Marys River is just a little bit of a stream in the spring that runs down this broad valley, flat, practically as flat as a floor.
Not so little up in the mountains.
And the valley is maybe mile and a half wide. So we worked there and kept working up and up the river until finally it was getting too far to commute back and forth to Deeth every day. So then, by golly, we found a rancher by the name of
Anderson.
Albert Anderson. And his wife said, yeah, she'd feed us. And she had one little kid, and then a couple other kids who were larger, much bigger.
Now,
And,
mind you, I'm not on this party yet.
no,
Yeah.
Oh,
Marthine
yeah, right.
isn't there yet. And so they said we could stay in an old schoolhouse they had. It was just a one-room schoolhouse. We could Welsh. The chief of party's name was Walsh, and Walsh and I could stay there. And the lesser guys. Well, one of them lived in the area. He and his dad had taken up a ranch there on the Marys River. And so he had a house, and I don't know where the fourth guy came from. I don't remember. But so then we'd go down the river to where we had ended and start working up toward the Anderson Ranch. And this was getting later and later in the fall. And in fact, it was they said that we'd worked there till it really got too tough, and then they'd move us down to the southern Nevada.
Now, once in a while, the weatherman will say the coldest spot in the country was at, and it's Deeth.
Deep,
Is that right?
terribly cold.
What was the survey for exactly? What were you
Well, the
surveying?
survey, yes, the survey was to determine the river gradients and look for sites for dam sites where there'd be a reservoir capacity, because of course that's what Nevada needs is water storage.
Marys River.
And this is the Marys River, which originates right about on the Idaho line and goes down south, more or less south, and meets the Humboldt River at Deeth, which is about the same thing as the Marys River, just a little water in the spring. But so we got up around the Anderson Ranch on the river, and they decided, well, they'd move us down to Pahranagat Valley. Well, the Pahranagat Valley, it was quite a fertile little valley in the desert down about 60 miles, I think it was, north of Las Vegas. And it was a Mormon community. This valley was again as flat as a floor, and it was about 25 miles long and a mile wide, and had some nice farms in it. And there were three big springs, biggest things I'd ever seen. Water would flow out in a ditch maybe 3 feet wide and a foot deep, flowing out of these springs. One was at the north end of the valley, would flow down a few miles. When it was about all used up, there'd be another spring. And they were kind of warm water. We could even swim in the middle of the winter there, but just warm water. So we stayed in there till along about January, or no, I guess it was February or March the next year, 36. And that was going to be the year we were going to get married. And so we...
with all the money they paid you.
Yeah, with all the money. Yes, I forgot to mention that I had to have this car to get the job. Then they would pay me $125 a month for myself and $60 a month for the car, and I'd furnish the gas and everything to run the car.
For
That's
vehicle use, Dan?
That's a
Use
little...
and-
What?
For the use of the vehicle for work?
Yeah, I would get that money. That would be $185 a month.
Yeah.
And so that's a little sideline. So the next spring then we moved back up to Elko County. Another party had done some work on the South Fork of the Humboldt. We went and hadn't quite finished it, but we went there and finished that. And then we moved up again to the Anderson Ranch to continue on where we had left off on the Marys River. So we worked there again for, I guess a month. And then I took a few days off. We went into Reno, and Mommy and I were married.
Picked her up in the Ford?
Oh yes, yes, that's all.
What else?
I really don't know what the. Oh well, by that time, by the next spring, the government had a car, so they didn't need my car anymore. So then I got dropped back to $125 a month. But anyway, so we did have the government car and my car. So I left and went back to Reno for a few days, and the rest of the party continued.
So you were married, what was the date you were married?
We were married on the 14th of June, 1936 in Reno.
Ta-da!
What was the wedding like? Was it a big wedding? A lot of people came?
No, we were married in the Catholic parish house, and then we had a reception at 120 Marsh Avenue. And the bridesmaids were sorority sisters, the Pope twins and Margaret Baker. And so anyway, it was a pleasant wedding. Should I tell a little?
Well, I was going to say, and there's nothing so drab as a Catholic parish house. There's no decorations of any kind. It's just meat and potatoes, chairs, and that's all.
So the wedding was not any glamorous thing, you know, like coming down Grace Cathedral and so forth. But I had a nice wedding dress and so forth.
Yeah.
But anyway, the family friends, the Flaggies, had offered their house that they were building at Lake Tahoe for our honeymoon. Oh, what a marvelous gift for a honeymoon present. And so anyway, Dad and I set out afterward. Oh, our sister, remember they tied cans to the car and all that jazz, you know, which, how did we get rid of all those cans? I can't remember that.
They tied cans on a string, I guess Hector was in on it, to the front axle of the car. So you couldn't get at it, and when we go around the curve, these cans, the string of cans would swing out to one side, and finally they went over the wheel, wound up
I
around
don't remember that. But needless to say, we didn't think it was so funny.
No.
So anyway, Dad, though, detached everything, and we shook rice out of us and so forth. And we had directions to get to the Flaggies' house at Tahoe, which was built up on the side of the mountain and had a beautiful view. However,
On the north side of the lake, on the north shore.
yeah, but when we got there, Miss Flaggy didn't know that the house was really under construction, to say the least. So we had the key, we got in the living room, and here was plaster all over. And
Well, Mr. Flaggy was there, you remember.
Oh, yeah.
And that Lewis, that oldest boy.
Oh, Lewis,
They were
yeah.
working there. So just as soon as we arrived, why, they exited.
They split.
They split.
They're going to leave the honeymoon couple. But,
Love working
So,
there.
oh, boy, we spent the day
Plaster and blocks of
cleaning
wood,
up.
dirt all over the place.
So anyway, but we cleaned up the living room, and we had very nice looking, and there was a fireplace, and we
Yeah.
had a fire in the fireplace. And anyway, then we had a couple of days to sail around the lake in that charming Ford. I guess we didn't tell you, you know, but Dad had this beautiful little blue Ford.
Oh. Yeah, 1931 Deluxe Roadster, colored blue with cream-colored wheels.
And real leather seats and a rumble seat in case you had your mothers to take along or something. So anyway, then we had a few days, and then it was time to start back to Howard's job out of Elko to the survey party. And
So we stopped at, well,
Go ahead.
we stopped in Reno, and Marthine's dad had some camping equipment. He had a tent,
oh yeah,
and he had a folding bed. So we got those and our own stuff and started out for Elko.
well, it's a long ways from Reno, and it's quite a trip. And the roads they were good, paved, but not like led us to Elko. But anyway, then how far was Deeth? 40 miles from Elko or something?
Yeah.
And then how far? Then when we got to Deeth,
Then
and
we-
Deeth is zero. Oh
Then
boy!
we
you
turned
know.
off then on a dirt road and went north from Deeth about 40 miles.
Now imagine, you know, another 40 miles, and then we were trying to get there at a certain date. Come on, Van, you can get up. And we got to a bridge, and there had been a rainstorm. And I don't know if people know the desert phrase of washouts, but they have these tremendous rainstorms, and it'll wash whole gullies out and washed out the bridge that we had to cross for an hour to get back to the job. Boy, Dad looked at this bridge caved down, water running over it, you know, and Dad said, well, I think that the Ford will make it over it. You know, it might be lopsided and so forth. And he says, you stay here, and I'll cross the broken bridge and see if I make it. I said, no way, boy. I'm coming too. So we got in the Ford together, and well, it was scary, believe me, you know, crunch and the water swishing by, and you know, you just kind of wondered if we were going to get over on the other side of the river, which we did. So then, when we got there, I don't remember, were the fellows there, or were they out working?
Well, yeah, it was pretty late at night, you know.
Oh,
It
gosh,
must have been,
by that time.
it was a moonlight night, but it was maybe about 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock.
Dad's
something
good on
like
these
that.
details. Moonlight
and,
night.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
see, at that time we had left the Anderson Ranch and had moved farther yet up the river. And they said, well, there's a lambing cabin up there that you can use. So before we were married, the party had moved up there for a few days and had gotten kind of established in this little cabin. But of course, the rest of the fellows were in the cabin. So your mother and I, we had to set up the tent there at night and
Outside the cabin.
crawl in, huh?
Removed.
Yeah,
I always want to
outside the
be
cabin.
removed from everybody.
Yeah.
So we were removed.
So,
But in the
yeah.
in that cabin was the old stove.
There was a stove
Yeah.
in the cabin, yeah.
So anyway, I had taken up food, and they had some staples there, and they the next day they were gone. Dad was working, and they all took their survey equipment, and they were gone. So, and we were miles from anything. But you know, I didn't mind. It was fine. So, and the party was all very glad that Howard got married because he married a cook also. So,
Marthine could be the cook.
yeah, but you know, I hadn't cooked that much at that point. But they kept telling me, boy, you know, we're awfully hungry, Marthine, when we come home. And you just be surprised how hungry you are, you know. So whatever you fix, we'll eat. Well, I had made macaroni before, but never on the scale that I made it for them. And they had a great big pot, and I put it in, but you know what happens to macaroni, it explodes. So finally they had a big metal dish pan, and the macaroni went into the dish pan, and I had big hunks of cheese, and I remember I made a sauce. They had probably lard, but anyway, I made a nice cream sauce. But I was embarrassed because this whole dish pan, although layered with cheese and everything, you know, it looked like it'd feed at least 30 people. Do you know they ate it all? It was the biggest compliment I ever had in my life.
She thought she had spaghetti and cheese for a week.
Yeah.
It was
but
all
they ate it
gone
all.
that night.
Yeah.
How many were you feeding?
Well, there was
Just
four of
four.
us. 4 of us.
Yeah. Me, I was 5, right?
Yeah, with a 5,
Yeah.
sure. Right.
But anyway, I managed some way to feed them all well, how long then before we made the arrangement to pack in? Because that was another experience, packing
Yeah.
in. We left this 40 miles from nowhere and packed into something that was really isolated, and it's now been made into a wilderness area, more or less. Go ahead, honey.
Well,
tell.
we stayed there at this cabin another couple of weeks because we were working up toward the cabin, and so then we went by the cabin and on up a little farther, and then we couldn't get up any farther with the truck, and so we made arrangements with Albert Anderson to furnish us 3 horses so that we could pack in, go over a hill, a mountain, and pack into above where we were working on the Marys River. And this was getting right in the mountains, and the stream would run the whole year round. That
Beautiful stream.
nice little stream of water. And so Albert at the appointed time came with 3 horses, and one was for Mommy to ride on, and the other 2 were to pack our stuff into this place. And we had to go in about 6 miles we had to go to.
Speaking of stuff, though, they asked me to order all the food that we were going to need for several weeks. And it had to be stuff that would keep. It had to be a limited amount because we were packing it in on these horses. And so I did the best I could, figuring out what would keep and what I could do with limited equipment. And the equipment was a grate to put over rocks, which would be our stove, and an iron Dutch oven, gosh, it might be the same one, in which I could bake bread and use for other things, and then whatever pots and pans we needed and so forth. And so anyway, was it that guy, that great big guy they called Babe, who kept saying, order plenty, order plenty. So anyway, he was enormous. I don't know, calling him Babe was inappropriate. But, so we got all this stuff, and Anderson took a look at the stuff that we wanted to pack on these, how many horses?
Just 2 horses to pack.
Yeah, and it seems to me the horse.
Well,
You tell
I
me.
said to Albert, I says, well, can you pack this for us? Oh, no, he couldn't pack it. He didn't know how to pack. He was a little bit lazy. And, well, I didn't know anything about packing. Didn't really have pack saddles. All we had was just the regular saddles. So you had to fasten stuff on and tie it on. And so I put on this stuff on both horses, and Albert was standing there all the time because, let's see, he was going to go over with us and bring the horses back and then come back and get us when we wanted to come out. So, so I'd say, well, don't you think I got too much on this horse? Oh, no, Jack can carry a lot. He's all right. Everything's okay. And I kept putting this stuff on this one horse and the other one too. But I was kind of sure that the horse was loaded too much. And so but anyway, we got it on and we started to move the horse and he kind of lost his balance and he spread his legs out, and then he just let the saddle go, and the saddle just rolled over, and there was all this load of stuff down in between his legs, and then that kind of scared him, and he started to buck, and I could just visualize our stuff getting kicked all over the campsite. But anyway, I got him calmed down, got the cinch undone on the saddle, and let the stuff all go down on the ground.
All the rest of us looking along in amazement.
Yeah.
So then I got on my horse, because the fellows walk, see, I had a horse, but the fellows walk. And I had heard about how they had shot with a pistol 19 rattlesnakes before I got there. And I'm not fond of snakes, and especially rattlesnakes. And you remember my horse shied. Of course, horses, I don't know why, they are very instinctively, I think, afraid of rattles. And have you ever heard a rattle out in the field rattle? I mean, you know what it is. I mean, it's a brrrr, and the horse bucked with me. But anyway, we better not make this so long.
Yeah.
We finally got up to the site, and one little catastrophe on the way. We lost the stove.
Yeah, but we didn't know that until we got there.
Oh, yeah. The
And
grate
then-
to put over the rock.
Yeah, this frame, you see, with the lid in it, and gosh, there it was gone.
Sinks in. I think you ought to be up on a cushion.
Okay, so we're recording now. And
Well-
you can start anytime you want. This is part 2 of the interviews here. After
Well,
lunch. Mom, you
Come on,
can sit
Joe, I
down.
gotta get in here.
Cameras
One way or
rolling,
another.
so. Remember where you left off? You were in the
Yes,
surveying part.
when we discovered the loss of this stove frame, that was quite a shock, and we didn't know how we would support our pans on the fire. So we looked around, and we remembered that there was an old sheep camp down the river just 100 yards or so, a couple hundred yards. Went down there and found a piece of baling wire. Well, if that didn't save the day, we were able to put a piece of wood stick across the top above the fire and suspend our utensils down from this wire.
Well, it wasn't like cooking on a Gen Air.
No, it sure wasn't. And we